All right, cool. We are started up. There we go. We have a lot going on. I have like a little itinerary here. And there's 4 major things that we can talk about, which is we have Hunter Biden's laptop that just popped up over the last couple of days. We have the gas prices, which we definitely have to get to every fucking week now because it's continuing to develop. And then we have Ukraine and a bunch of shit in the Ukraine that I can go over there. So what do we want to start with?
That's been a whole doozy lately.
Yeah. So what do we want to do first?
That is up to you. Whatever you think would be appropriate. I'm okay either way. I think we can pretty safely segue from one thing to the next.
Yeah. Okay. Well, gas prices. I guess we should we can start with, since yeah, that's kind of gonna be like our little weekly update, I think, to see what's going, especially in my state of despair.
Yeah.
My state of despair is all I can say. So, yeah. Switches over to the presentation. There we go. Now I have on the screen, and it's sharing on Discord too, right?
Yeah, I kind of got a screen here. I don't know if there's anything up yet, but
Let me see here.
thanks to your mouse. Shit.
Oh. Let's see. Screen. What the heck? But it doesn't actually. It's like a black screen though, right?
Until you pull something up. Yeah, once you pull something up, I see stuff. Currently, it's a... Oh,
Is
there
it-
we go. I got
Okay,
stuff now.
Got. Okay, great. Good.
Yeah. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. So yeah, national average now is 4.2, which is even higher than it was a couple of days ago. I want to say. Hold on. It usually says the time change as well. Ooh, maybe not. It was what? I forgot what it was last time that we looked at it, but I think it was much lower than 4.2. And yeah, over on the East Coast, you guys are doing well with $4 gas, then 3.7. I guess the New England is kind of getting higher with the 4.3s and 4.1.
Relatively, but man, I'm getting tired of paying like fucking $50 to fill my car up. I can't afford that shit.
Yeah, it's still, but look, man, California right now is nuts. It's at 5.8 for the average for the entire state. Like even the other reds are like 4.7, 4.7 in Oregon and Washington, 5.1 in Nevada, 4.4 and 4.6 in Utah, and we're a good like $1.50 above the rest of them in there. What is Illinois is still only 4.4, Alaska 4. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. And yeah, DDM says gas actually dropped 40 cents where you're at. It still sucks at $4. Yeah. And my like the counties, especially like Southern California, Orange County, Los Angeles, $6 average.
Jesus. Yeah, that's
5.9 average. Only Inyo and Mono, yeah, these 6.6 average, right? Like over here, these guys are having the worst time of their fucking lives. And so yeah, I've seen the gas station down the street that I had taken pictures of a couple weeks ago. That was at 609, and then like 3 weeks before today it was like at 540, and today it was like, or 2 days ago it was like at 619.
And that's just like regular gas. They're not even talking about diesel, which is like highly inflamed. I mean, we had to switch. There's more than a couple places around here that have talked about it. They've had to completely switch like their shipping carriers and stuff because of how expensive it's gotten to have your weekly anything. Like just to get shipments of stuff is so goddamn expensive because the gas has gone up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it doesn't make any fucking sense. It really, it's mind blowing, and especially the fact that like we were seeing all those takes last week about, oh well, it's just our duty to put up with it, and I'm like, I don't fucking think so, bud. I don't think so.
In what way is it helping?
Yeah, no, it just doesn't fucking make sense. And you can see, yeah, now down here the chart of the averages from like over time. Like a week ago, it was about 10 cents lower. A month ago, it was relatively the same. But like, yeah, California's been doing horrible because even a year ago, it was still 3.8 average. Like, this has been nuts for a while. And so yeah, that's the state. That's the state of things now. And I can't wait to see what it'll be like, next Monday even.
I mean,
we'll talk about it again.
If the trend continues, like, I mean, how much longer is it sustainable? Like, what happens when people stop being able to even go to work, much less afford shit?
Yeah.
I mean, this has been going on for like a month.
Yeah, no, there can't be.
That's like the most recent spike. The actual increase and everything has been going on for a year, you know?
And of course, like this, everybody's like daily commute is obviously the most immediate, like the immediate results of everything. But I mean, everything takes gas to do, right? Everything takes gas to fucking function. All of our shit, I mean, at least where I'm from, because it's all cities and shit, everything that we get is driven around from place to place, and or whatever method of transportation, it takes fuel of some sort. And as progressive as California wants to be, like, nah, our shipping and our fucking all logistical shit is not done through like sustainable means or nothing. It's all fucking gasoline and diesel and all that shit. And so just it's all gonna get way fucking more expensive. And this whole idea of like like we've seen a good chunk of the inflation already. Like it's just getting fucking started. My Discord,
it's only gonna get worse.
So
get worse. We ain't seen nothing yet.
Oh, and so speaking of one now that I remember, I have one thing related to gas prices, is like a PolitiFact article actually, which is surprisingly lucid and accurate, and it's based off of, because there's this now common like Prague trope that the gas prices are due to greedy gas company price gouging. And it's not due to the supply restrictions and inflation and all these other economic sources that we know cause increases in gas prices. And they always find, this is the thing about Pragues that don't understand economics at all, is that they find a particular number or metric that they can latch onto, and then they make it a meme. They make it an NPC line that they repeat incessantly over and over and over again. And they think, haha, I found the debunking argument. I've debunked you. And so for this particular case, the gas prices, it's the companies are price gouging. And the way that we know this is because the price of a barrel of oil is like different from how the prices like it's lower than it was when like gas prices were increasing like in 2007, and they're basically saying, oh, the price of the barrel of oil doesn't match how expensive gas should be, and like therefore it's actually price gouging and not due to a natural price increase. And surprisingly enough, I found PolitiFact rating this as false, right? The price gouging claim, they actually debunked this. They debunked the debunking. And how PolitiFact is, that they actually take a very specific case of a claim, and they debunk that. But still,
yeah, it's usually like a highlighted like article or something that somebody said, and they go through it.
Yeah, and so for this one, it's like a Facebook post that compared the prices of oil and gas from 2008 to 2022. And specifically like the barrels of oil, and like I said, showing that the difference in cost, like this proves that the difference in cost is not due to more expensive oil, but and they basically go over that like these price changes take time, like they're not as like inelastic with the price of oil that they just follow along and match each other, to a certain, like, what is it, like a certain ratio, or some shit like that, right? It's not really, that's not how prices work. And that, like, when supplies expand and contract, the price follows, but at a delayed response, because like when the price goes up, it's not like gas stations can like increase exactly to match the price increase, because they have to compete with each other locally, right? And so like if the price of a barrel of oil went up, that it would justify like a $2 increase in gas, you're not going to see $2 higher at the pump tomorrow. They're going to do it slowly over time. And then so when the price goes down, the same effect happens, because they still have to recoup the losses from selling the oil, the higher price of the oil, but not matching the price.
It's delayed. Exactly. It's delayed going the exact other direction. So even if it goes down, it's still going to take a while for the effect to actually hit.
Yeah, exactly. And so because the cost, because the cost increase needs to be recouped on the back end, since they can't increase the price, drastically on the front end. And so, yeah, that's basically what the article goes over. I was very surprised to see PolitiFact actually having some, like, sense in terms of like nuance in economics and pricing. And so, yeah, that was really surprising for me and pretty impressive. And yeah, especially with the whole pricing, like citing the average prices from the past to sort of solidify that, because and they where was the thing? Oh yeah, they highlighted that different global conditions are at play as well. In 2008, the spike in oil and gas prices was tied to the financial crisis. A recession caused a drop in demand for gasoline, and as economic recovery began, there was an immediate ramp up in production to meet the growing supply. That supply crunch caused the price to spike, and then so this is caused obviously by inflation from the past, but also the Russian-Ukraine conflict that contributed to the rapid price rises. But it's also normal for prices to rise this time of year due to increased demand from spring and summer. And so this will have like a effect of keeping things elevated beyond like what you would expect from crude oil prices. And then there's other things like truck driving shortages, labor costs, inflation. Like all this stuff is different from how it was in 2008, and including the gasoline price, gasoline tax is even slightly higher than it was before. So yeah, PolitiFact.
I mean, it's been fucking forever since 2008. I don't know why people are referencing that of all things.
Yeah, it was just a time that they could point to where the price of crude oil increased, and they want to compare that to the price of gasoline. And so they think they have a case because crude oil prices are lower now than they were back then, but our gas prices are higher than back then. Therefore, it's price gouging and not like a normal pricing mechanism, right? Not normal market, functions. It's greedy oil companies just looking to make a dollar during the time of our need. It's just a fucking boogeyman story. But and so they, like I said, they latch on to the smallest of like details in terms of like a metric that they can, like it's just like this is a number. This is a number, and numbers, the people talk to me about numbers all the time. They tell me about numbers, and so this is a number, and I think this number proves my point. But there's no like economic sense behind it, no actual like knowledge of market forces. It's just I found a metric that I can use to it's the same with like I fucking lost my shit on the first episode about what was it, trickle down economics, right? Like
yeah.
There's no fucking such thing. It's just not a real thing. But they hear that phrase, and so they can be like, there's trickle down economics. That's stupid. Economics doesn't trickle down, you silly fuck. And then they think they've won the argument. And it's the same with this. And the reason why I wanted to bring it up is I actually heard one of my Prague coworkers talking literally like almost line by line this exact fucking argument, and I'm just like, oh god, I know where you got it from. and I know it's wrong, and I'm just not gonna have this conversation at work though. Fuck that.
Yeah, you gotta pick your battles sometimes.
Yeah. So that was amazing. And then Hunter Biden's laptop is real, which we all fucking knew the whole time because we saw pictures of him on the motherfucker with his crack pipe. And so it's like no surprise to us, but it's just like, no, you can say it on the news and it's allowed, you know, it's fine. It's just kind of,
you can say it on social media platforms and not get banned for disinformation.
Yeah, and you still have, of course, genius Twitter motherfuckers still being like, you know, yeah, censorship based on misinformation is correct because we can't have misinformation and disinformation and malinformation. Yeah, we heard the malinformation was like today or yesterday. Did you see that?
That's a fun new one. That okay, so it might be true, but it's being used to hurt stuff that we that we're uncomfortable having been criticized. Therefore, you know, it's malinformation. Malicious information.
That's true though.
What the fuck is malicious information?
It's information that, like, it's bad if you know, like, this is some CIA shit, you know? Like, it's just like, hey, it's bad. It would be bad if you knew this, so I'm gonna keep it from you. And it's like, oh, you know what? Eat a dick. I don't know about that. I don't think you should decide what I should know. How about that? Yeah, I know. The story would have literally changed. Like, honestly, it was just amazing to me. I was like, you guys are really gonna fucking, like, this dude, like, participates in human trafficking and smokes crack and you know, is like a corrupt fucking what is it, like, board member of a corporation to, like, financially, like, to politically assist his daddy. Like, this is like one of the worst motherfucking, you know, capitalist boogeymen like people that you could ever. There's a whole family besides the Clintons, maybe, which, you know, still amazes me that she got as far as she did in that sphere. And it was just, yeah, you know, you're there scratching your head, be like, it's all there. He's a pervert. He's a drug addict. He's just fucking all around asshole. It's, what do you need to not vote down the fucking blue line?
Apparently, it's still not enough.
I intentionally spread malicious information because it's funny. I just lie to people. Yeah, sometimes it's great. Like, you know, that's why I respect Robert Pattinson so much. It's because he'll just lie to reporters about things that you don't even need to lie about. Just do it
during interviews, just for fun. Yeah.
But
like the thing he channels he channels the dark
Sonic. Yeah, the dark Sonic. I play Sonic in between, but only the dark storyline. And so, yeah, it was now authenticated. And I've heard reports, I don't know if it's on this article, that there is some underage people on the laptop, pictures of underage girls. So it's like, yeah, maybe if, you know, the presidential candidate had a son who was involved in pedophilia, that would sort of make people question his ability to run. And like, if he can't run his family, how about an entire country?
Well, you know, that, and plus it's like, there's no way he didn't know. I mean, there's no way he didn't know. Like,
yeah,
just,
and
I don't believe that there's no way that he didn't know.
Oh no. No, especially because this was I got, you know, this update from the New York Post, which was the place that originally published the Biden laptop story to begin with, and they got censored on Twitter for it back then. And
right.
And yeah, and so yeah, they say right here, smugly, that readers of the Post have known this. So readers of the Times have discovered in March 2022 that Hunter Biden pursued business deals in Europe and Asia, may have leveraged his father's position as vice president to do it. Hunter also may have not properly registered with the government and declared all his income. All legitimate topics of discussion about a presidential candidate's family? No. Readers of the Post have known this since October 2020. We also have a much better sports section. We've authenticated it. But and yeah, this is the shop that they found it at. But yeah, now that's a story that's fit for print, and you can say it on Twitter, and they won't ban you, even though it was true the whole time. And I heard rumors DTM about the Ashley Biden diary getting confirmed, but I haven't read anything concrete on it. I just, among the Tumblr rumor mill, that's something that I heard was true. But yeah, I haven't. More than that, I can't say.
That's one of those things. It's like if it does get confirmed, like you'll just end up with another person committing suicide or getting robbed and shot in the back of the head twice or something. You know,
Right.
like that'll get disappeared. That'll instantly get fucking disappeared. Because I mean that's you know, like that's it. That ends up being true. That's everything. Because that's just not Biden's kid. That's Biden.
Yeah, that's pretty big news.
You know, people they have a little. Well, they think they have a little bit of wiggle room to be like, well, it's just his kid. It's not Biden. Biden's the president. His kid's not president. Obviously, this would be a problem if his kid was president. Blah 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 blah. But you end up finding this fucking diary that says, well, it seems to run in the family.
Yeah, you would think at some point there's a line. I would hope.
I don't know. You would think at some point that there would be, but it just keeps getting pushed back with every issue that we see lately. The line just keeps going back and back and back. Like it doesn't matter. I mean, instead of finally, hitting that point, it's the vote blue no matter who crowd just keeps kind of moving it back, even though they were the ones saying like, oh, we're gonna hold them accountable and stuff. It's like when? Yeah.
From the chat, it's I think everyone being at least somewhat conscious of most/all U.S. politicians being corrupt in some way leads people just not to be surprised or care anymore. And yeah, I mean, like that's what I always heard growing up was like, politicians equals crook. They're all fucking crooks, and that was just a common like understanding about politics and politicians. And as a teenager, I took it to heart and I was like, yeah, I don't trust these motherfuckers. And then I continue not to trust them for the rest of my but everybody else was like, well, yeah, now we got to campaign for them and change politics to make it better. I'm like, well, I don't think that works that way. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
And so get rid of some pages real quick. So this one we'll save it for the other week because it's a 2-hour video and very interesting. But the one before we get to all the Ukraine stuff is Jesse Smollett, because this is quite a situation. Oh, and actually there's one video that I want to pull up on here, not you. Was it Jesse Smollett lawyers sued? Let me see. Oh yeah, well, I can I wish there was like a 2-minute. Anyways, that's a story we can talk about as well. How about an article? Yeah, okay, we'll pull up that after the main thing, which is in the past week and a half, he was sentenced to 150 days in jail and like some odd years of probation. He was jailed for that sentence and then released pending appeal, which is fine. I think like getting released pending appeal is okay generally as a concept, because the idea is that like you can be if you're in jail the whole time that you're in court on the appeal, you can end up serving a sentence that if you're found not guilty on appeal, then you can't get the time back because you've served a sentence that would have even been like longer than let's say the actual sentence itself, or you shouldn't have served a sentence at all, because you're found not guilty on appeal, but right. you've lost the time that you you had being in jail during that time. So that makes sense, but the reason for appeal is super fucking interesting, because especially how you see the the legal minds like in the mainstream media covering it, because what they hear is what the grounds for that the lawyers cited for appeal is that originally in the case the local district attorney had a deal with Justice Smollett to pay the to not surrender his $10,000 bond. They say paying a $10,000 fine, but it was really he had paid a bond and he's surrendering that, forfeiting it, and then completing community service. And he did those things, and as a condition of those things, the case would be dismissed. But then the district attorney recused. Oh no, I think it was before this. The district attorney had recused himself, but then a person in the district attorney's office was promoted to a fictitious position. Like it was like a position within there that didn't technically exist and isn't like a real thing in a district attorney's office. But they then made the deal with Jussie Smollett for this dismissal. But the problem is that that the people like Jussie Smollett's lawyers aren't pointing out, that a lot of the mainstream media people aren't pointing out. I forgot which guy. I watch a bunch of like fucking YouTube lawyers that talk about, you know, current cases and things like that. And one of those dudes was it Nate the lawyer. Yeah, Nate the lawyer. I was going to look him up. But basically what he talks about is the fact that since the district attorney had recused herself, this also applies to everybody within the district attorney's office. And so that person who made a deal with Jussie Smollett about about the dismissal didn't have any legal grounds to do so. And so when
they had no authority to do it, so
when the special prosecutor was assigned, even though he had made a deal, even though he had legitimately surrendered the bond. Oh, it was no, it was $150,000. Oh yeah, so $150,000 bond would be $15,000, I think. Maybe it's both. Maybe it was the surrendering the bond, paying $10,000, and the community service. Regardless, he did all those things. He completed, that agreement of the sentence, but that deal doesn't fucking matter because it was with a district attorney who was recused and with an office that was recused. And so, they were claiming double jeopardy because they say, hey, we made this deal, we abided by the deal, and then we were retried. The case was reopened and redone completely differently with this jail sentence instead. Therefore, double jeopardy, which don't make no sense. And another really good funny thing about the whole case too, actually, I think I'll just pull up Nate the lawyer's video on it because you can just see it for yourself. What like the lawyers themselves are trying to claim like now versus what they claimed like a year or like the year during the trial itself, which is, where is it? Not sued for defamation. Oh yeah, where they made a huge mistake.
All right, so let's talk about Jussie Smollett's attorneys and how I think they've really hurt his chances for appeal.
Fuck your intro.
With prosecutors at the beginning, and that deal was they'll drop charges and Jussie will do 2 days community service and forfeit $10,000 bond. So if that's the case, then prosecuting Jussie again and punishing him again for the same crime would essentially violate double jeopardy. He was punished twice. So let's see what their arguments were before and after. Now, this is why this is important, because it seems like his attorneys, they had loose lips and they were saying one thing before and now they're saying something different again. All right, so this is Jussie Smollett's attorney. Now, initially, after Smollett was arrested and then the prosecutor dismissed the case, his attorneys did a national media blitz, and they were going on television show after television show after morning show telling people that Jussie was innocent and that he pleaded guilty to nothing, and they had no deal, absolutely no deal with the prosecutor. He wasn't prosecuted, none of that, right? He wasn't prosecuted, he had no deal. Instead of me telling you, let's listen to his attorney the day after, I think this maybe a day or two after the charges were dismissed by the state prosecutor's office. She's going to explain to you whether the bail and the community service were conditions that Jussie needed to do to get the dismissal or not. So we're going to figure that out.
Yeah, so like the important bit of this, right, of their claim about the double jeopardy is that we had a deal with the DA and we abided by that deal. We met all the conditions of the deal, and now they're backing out of it, or they've reneged on it, and something different. So we had a deal that's like prime importance for their case in double jeopardy, right?
Get that out right now.
Strictly with the prosecutors who were actually handling the case.
Now, the prosecutor's office says that the charges were dropped in exchange for your client's agreement to forfeit $10,000 that he had paid in a bond and to do community service. Is that correct? Were those conditions on his dismissal of charges?
There were no conditions, and there was no, obviously there was no plea, there was no agreement in place. They did want him to forfeit the bond, and that's something that we discussed with him, and he initially struggled with because he didn't want the perception to be that he had done anything wrong. But at the end of the day, forfeiting $10,000 versus putting your life on hold for a year was a small cost to pay.
But to be clear, because the prosecutors are now trying to say, well, there were conditions. This wasn't a get-out-of-jail-free card. You're saying he chose to forfeit that bond essentially voluntarily.
Yeah, I mean, well, they had asked if he would do that, and we advised him that he should do that because it was going to cost him almost, multiples of that number to go to trial.
What about the community service aspect of it?
The community service is something we initially raised ourselves at the initial bond hearing, saying this is somebody who's volunteered hundreds of hours, thousands of hours since he was a teenager to all sorts of organizations. It's something he's always done. So in our discussions with the prosecution, we told them about his volunteer service. We did show them a few letters of his ongoing community service.
But was this a condition of the charges being released? He's got to do this community service.
He had to do nothing. There was no obligations, no conditions. These are things that he chose to do because that's his character. And again, you can find out from multiple sources that this is what he's done for years and years and years with multiple organizations.
Let's talk about...
So I need you to be clear. He did all of that. He did the community service. He gave up the bond voluntarily. There was no conditions, absolutely no conditions, right? He just did that because he's a good guy. That's what she said. That's what she just said, right? They had no deal. There was no deal. Absolutely no deal. Charges were dismissed. He was never in jeopardy, never had a deal. You're crazy to even think that. That's what she's saying. That's exactly what she's saying. There it is, right? March 28, 2019. So we know exactly what she said. We know exactly, and this is the same lawyer. She's still representing him, right? This is the same defense team. So now, Jesse's been convicted. What's their argument for appeal? So let's go to Jesse's attorney again, right? And let's see what the attorney's argument is going to be now. So here's Jesse Smollett's other attorney. Now remember, they've been saying for almost about a year or 2 years now that there was never a deal. He did all this stuff voluntarily. There was no deal, no deal. Now, their client's been convicted. They said there was no double jeopardy because there was no deal. Now listen to how the story has changed. Again, these are his attorneys. Listen to what they're saying.
3 years now. Just the basic one I will start off with is the fact that the prosecutor's office originally dismissed this case. Now,
Correct.
A lot of people can disagree as to why they did, but the reality is they dismissed the case and he was made to do community service and give up a $10,000 bond. He's not getting that $10,000 bond back, and he cannot undo the community service he did. Another prosecutor was appointed on behalf of the state to prosecute the same case the state had dismissed before. And really, it's an ancient principle, a deal's a deal. Regardless of how anyone feels about it, this prosecution shouldn't have even begun after that dismissal initially.
This is where you get the both sides talking out of your mouth, right? Because he's
talking out of both sides of your mouth, but good enough. But yeah, so you can see how weak the arguments are, and just how the straws that Justice Smollett's legal team is grasping at now to have him avoid going to jail and to staying in jail. I'm sure it's not fun. I'm sure he don't like it, but goddamn if you don't deserve it though.
Like, he completely deserves it. I don't understand why they're still dragging this out so much. Like, it's over.
Yeah, it's so dumb. But yeah, now on top of all that, now Justice Smollett's lawyers themselves are getting sued by defamation by the Osundairo brothers, the two African dudes that helped him set up the robbery. And the reason, or what they're doing is because his lawyers had claimed that, like, once it was revealed that the Osundairos had done it, we're still going with the fact that, like, the Osundairos had, like, done it to him and not set it up with him. and they were interviewed a couple times about like well, how would Jussie have identified a white person, because he initially said it was a white person. Why did he do that if it was the two black dudes? He's like, oh well, they probably wore makeup underneath, like whiteface, and here's a photo of them wearing whiteface, and it was like some Joker makeup or some shit that doesn't look like a white person. And it was really, really terrible, and I wonder if they have it. They probably don't, but yeah. But yeah, so basically insinuating, hey man, like, they straight up did it, yeah, it's them, but we weren't in on it, even though as Jussie's lawyers team, they would have known for a fact that the Alston Dyros did not in fact rob Jussie Smollett, like commit a strong armed robbery against him, like they would have had like the text message information, or was it evidence, and the fucking video. I'm pretty sure there was a video of them like practicing the fucking thing, right?
Yeah.
And so as Jussie's lawyers, they would have known that going onto the media, on media appearances and giving a testimony as if they were legitimately had been robbing him, that's something that they would have known beforehand is false statement and a defamatory statement. So they're now getting sued over that.
This whole thing is an insane clusterfuck.
Yeah. So those are the lighter news bits. Now we have. Now I know this looks like we're going to be cringing at Jen Psaki right now, which ironically enough we're not going to be cringing at Jen Psaki right now. We probably could in many other instances, but this particular compilation just kind of has to be seen to be believed.
Zelensky and other Ukrainian officials have made so clear that what they believe they need the most is more warplanes and fighter jets. So why is the U.S. assessing something different? Why does the U.S. believe they know better what Ukraine needs than what Ukrainian officials are saying they need the most?
It sounds like, we're pretty dug in on our position when it comes to the no-fly zone, when it comes to the MiGs, despite this growing bipartisan call in Congress to shift a little bit. So, to put it bluntly, is Zelensky wasting his time tomorrow asking for these things?
President Zelensky is going to be speaking to Congress tomorrow. He's been pushing for fighter jets, a no-fly zone. You have to hear some of those same requests tomorrow as well. Has the administration shifted on that at all?
Estonia, though, calling for a no-fly zone. They're a NATO member. They share a border with Russia. How do we view their calls for a no-fly zone?
So just like right off the bat, like you can see a pattern here. And it's war, more fucking war.
Yeah, because I don't think people understand necessarily what that means. Like, you say no fly zone, like what does that mean? Like, well, what it really ends up meaning is shooting down Russian jets.
Yeah, active acts of war.
Yeah.
From U.S. troops, U.S.
Right.
U.S. resources.
You can't say that you're not involved. Like you can't say that you're not involved at that point.
Yeah, it's just open warfare at that point. And it's like, well, yeah, listen, countries, nuclear superpowers tend to try to avoid open warfare with one another because there's a certain ending to that. That's fucking horrible. And we've done
how quickly shit escalates.
Yeah, it's nuts. And that's actually a really good portion of the Scott Horton talk that we'll go over next week or when we can, is that he has a whole section just on the nuclear incentive to this whole fucking deal, because it's supremely important when talking about Russia. It's it was a big part of the last century, and it hasn't gone away. Yes, there's less nukes than there were back then. We've both dialed them back considerably, but not enough not to be dangerous. And so, yeah, we can hear a couple more minutes of this.
Tomorrow, of course, he is expected to ask for more assistance, as my colleague noted. a lot of the U.S. positions on that haven't changed, as you just said, when it comes to the no-fly zone. But on the aircraft specifically, the Pentagon said last week that Secretary Austin said they do not support the transfer of additional fighter aircraft at this time. Is that still the United States' position?
Would a strike in Poland on supplies or anything really automatically be met with a military, a forceful response, or simply a conversation amongst allies about how to respond?
There are reports that a Russian drone made its way into Polish airspace before going back to Ukraine and being shot down. Does a drone into Poland?
Oh my god. I haven't seen all of this.
Can we please just start killing people?
What if they have a horse? What about a Russian horse? Like if a horse, wandered off of a farm into Poland, can we shoot the horse? Can we bomb the horse at least? Can we punish that horse? Like seriously, she's literally grasping the air. trying to come up with a fucking drone temporarily meandering into Poland. Yes.
Oh man.
Count. Former ambassador to Ukraine, Maria Ivanovich, has been quite outspoken recently, and she said we need to mitigate risk, but it's also true that not taking greater action comes with a risk as well, because Putin is a bully and he only understands strength. Is the president showing enough strength against Putin? If Putin were to use chemical weapons, would it change the president's thinking when it comes to these MiGs taking the no-fly zone off the table? But at least on this issue, if you prepared, can you give us any more details about what that threat means of severe consequences? The president obviously made the same threat last week. Is that purely economic consequences, or would there potentially be a military threat? Go ahead.
So, aside from the request for weapons, President Zelensky has also requested that the U.S. be more involved in negotiations toward a peaceful resolution to the war. What is the U.S. doing to push those negotiations forward?
Well, one of the steps we've taken, a significant one, is to be the largest provider of military and humanitarian and economic assistance in the world, to put them in a greater position of strength as they go into these negotiations. We also engage and talk to the Ukrainians on a daily basis.
Well, that's one thing that is just so interesting to me about this idea that we can arm Ukraine enough to be able to withstand an onslaught against Russia without direct aid from the United States. Like we could ever give them enough weapons to be able to do this on their own. Like it's just, they do not have the fucking manpower to do that. Like we could fucking hand them all like GD planes and missiles and shit. It's like Russia's still gonna be better armed than them and be able to execute those arms than Ukraine is. And Russia honestly isn't even that like big of a military superpower when outside of their nuclear capabilities, right? In terms of like just the raw like military strength and like tanks and fighters and all that stuff. I mean, I'm not the biggest like military fucking head of all time, but I could be wrong here. I don't think that like, especially in terms of like, when like the US and it comes into play, like in terms of like just military power, like we fucking dwarf them, but they got nukes.
A lot of their equipment and shit is also in horrible disrepair. Like that's been a pretty funny highlight with a lot of this stuff, is like a lot of their vehicles and stuff are breaking down and they don't work because they haven't been maintained.
Yeah. But insofar as like they can bully around Ukraine militarily, like fuck yeah, they can. And
I mean, they can do that just out of pure manpower. Like they have more fucking dudes to slap rifles into their hands and send them over there. Like there's just too many fucking Russians.
Yeah. And they can, just slap rifles into them, just on that basis, like they got enough rifles to go around. And so
also,
this idea that we can like arm Ukraine to the point where they are actually properly in a position to negotiate against Putin is just fucking dumb. It's like it's just like this whole like veneer of a solution that doesn't do anything at all.
And the president and this national security team has rallied the world in being unified in their opposition to the actions of President Putin. So those are the steps we're taking. We also engage oftentimes before and after any conversations that any of these global leaders are having with both Russians and Ukrainians, and encourage them to make sure they're engaging with Ukrainians directly.
So would Zelensky be empowered by the United States to reach an agreement with Russia and have U.S. sanctions released as a result?
Well, he's the leader of Ukraine, so he's empowered to have a negotiation with Russia, and we're here to support those efforts.
That's a yes.
Again, I'm not going to get ahead of a negotiation, but we are here to support those efforts. We discuss and have conversations with him, with his team on a daily basis.
So that's the fucking White House press corps on war. How fucking lovely, right?
Oh God.
And we have the White House press corps, and on the other end of media, we have Redditors, and their desire to help out.
Yeah, all the way on the other fucking end.
Yeah.
It's like horseshoe theory.
Oh, this first one is somebody from there who's like, I'd prefer if you fucking guys would just leave, and of course the Redditors in was it just in their state of absolute brilliance and not total ignorance. They're like, what are you doing to help? It's like you're fucking denying help from people who would give it. And he had to explain to them, like, listen, like, this is my family and like my my homes that you guys are directly like fucking over, and nobody who's on the ground, nobody who's directly affected by this shit wants to be involved at all. We can't just pick up and leave a war zone. Not even in Russia, conscientious objectors are treated fucking horribly. We got fucking Azov guys executing people for refusing to fight.
Oh no, you can't talk about that. That's actually how that's some of the shit that I got in today. Like, people get really pissed off when you start talking about how, yeah, like, Putin's definitely a tyrant, but Ukraine is responding very similarly, but it's not getting the same criticism, and it's not allowed to get the same criticism.
Oh yeah, and the thing is, it didn't start with February, right? Like, Ukraine has been an aggressor, not against Russia directly, but when Putin needs to grasp at a straw in order to justify flexing his muscles, like, he's been given the cards, like, by the opposition, basically. It's like there are very easy ways to prevent Putin from having the excuses of Nazis in the Ukraine. We like by not having
Nazis
a Nazi battalion that, like, I mean, there's one thing of like having Nazis in Ukraine. Sure, every country's got Nazis that has like a nationalistic bent to it, but like having a Nazi paramilitary brigade that's then subsumed into your National Guard, and then its members being part of your government, like, that's a thing that you can avoid.
I feel like pretty easily, like, with a minimal effort, that's something you can pretty easily avoid.
Yeah, especially the ones that are like fucking flashing the Roman salute everywhere, and like there are some real obvious ones, right? You don't need to use this whole fucking like dog whistle business when like they're pretty fucking open about it, a lot of them.
It's not crypto fascism where you're like, well, you gotta make up a bunch of reasons why you suspect, but you can't prove. It's like, no, these guys are open about it. They're really fucking open about it.
Yeah, and yeah, in chat, people have been getting pissed when you say it's a bad thing to torture POWs. Yeah, that's been a take recently.
I won't name any names, but that honestly was a fucking stunt. Not just the fact that well, this happens in war, but like that anybody would resort to that, were they in the same situation? And I'm like, well, no, I'm pretty sure even then I wouldn't.
Well, as opposed, when we can look at history and be like, well, what about like, when they had that Christmas time in World War I, right? Where like the two sides that were shooting at each other before had decided, it's like, you know what, at least we could have Christmas, right? Like we could just fucking play some soccer and not like fear for our lives for one fucking day. And that doesn't like show you that it's like even soldiers that are trying to kill each other the day before really just want to treat each other humanely because they don't have a fucking dog in this fight. They really fucking don't. And yeah, some like the Ukrainians have their homes and shit, you know, in the fight, but honestly, so do the Eastern Ukrainians who are called Russian separatists. Like this.
But I mean, I highly doubt, you know, like I said, that it's your average Ukrainian citizen that is being ordered to castrate captured, you know, Russian prisoners. Like we're not talking about some fucking old lady who's defending her neighborhood who's being ordered to do this. You know, this is clearly something that's going on with the paramilitaries, the same people that are going around beating up the people who are refusing to fight and shit.
Yeah, and stealing bread and
so
it's like, yeah, your entire infrastructure is crumbling down. You swiped a loaf of bread, so we're tying you to a pole and fucking beating the shit out of you.
This fucking argument that the average person would immediately devolve into a bloodthirsty rape monster in the middle of war, and it's like, really, because most people don't.
Yeah, I don't know. We kind of hated that shit. Like
most people don't and agree that that's bad.
Yeah, and we'll get into another article later on about Zelensky, the defense of Zelensky because he's Jewish, and truly how we can know that Azov really is, one, like right-wing nationalist, you know, pro-Nazi, and two, deeply involved in the Ukrainian government. It's not just some sort of, because there's another meme that comes around Twitter I've seen that's like, oh, only 10% of the Azov members are confirmed Nazis, and only, you know, so and so percent of the National Guard is made up of Azov. Therefore, the actual percentage of Nazis is like 0.001 or some shit, and therefore it's a big boogeyman that the Tucker Carlson is trying to, you know, brainwash you with. And it's like, well, you know, fuck the numbers. I don't trust the numbers for one, but let's just pretend the numbers are what you say they are. The number of people involved doesn't matter if those small numbers are the leaders. You know, like if they're in charge of the shit, then it doesn't matter. Like if they're in charge of the rest of them, then it doesn't matter that the rest of them aren't confirmed Nazis. They're following confirmed Nazis, and those confirmed Nazis are in government. Like it doesn't matter that, you know, you're fucking missing the forest or the trees again, because they have like a metric that they can latch onto, a small, you know, meme of fact that they can, you know, debunk people with, and it's not fucking real. It's just more smoke and mirrors. But yeah, there's a good article on that. But let's not leave Reddit yet, because there's a fucking Reddit. Here we go. Your family is in danger, but you're sitting on the guy. You're shitting on the guy helping them get over the border to safety. You really must love your family. And they have to point out to them, it's like, listen, the fucking Ukrainian military is prohibiting men from crossing the border and leaving. You're signed up to help enforce people being forced to stay and die there. Like, this is the Ukrainian military isn't fucking the good guys in this situation. And so he's like, yeah, I'm shitting on a guy who endangers my family instead of volunteering for like an actual aid organization like Doctors Without Borders.
Also, I think that specific person that was responding, talking about his family and stuff, didn't they say something? They also have family like in Russia, and they have family in Ukraine, and potentially they were pointing out that like my family could end up shooting at each other because of this.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't fucking helping anything. Like, stay the fuck out of it, because you have no idea what you're doing. You don't really have any idea why you're doing it. People are just doing this shit for, you know, clout. And, I mean, they're just making it worse.
No, most definitely. And speaking of making things worse, we have the actual people who went down and volunteered. And so actually here, this is better for that. But yeah, it's basically the guy talking about is like, wait a second, you know, it's dangerous and people are getting killed. I was like, here today and blowing off the top bunk of my bunk bed in the barracks by the first missile. Made a long post about it, but my posts don't show on this thread for some reason. This was where all the Foreign Legion troops are. The 35 were all killed, were all Ukrainian, mostly due to a direct hit on their barracks next to mine. The base is destroyed, the weapons depot destroyed, possibly the end of the Legion. About 60 people with their heads on straight, including myself, left after the attack. They're sending untrained guys to the front with little ammo and shit AKs, and they're getting killed. The guys who stayed got bombed again in the afternoon, and casualties aren't clear. If you still want to join them, I'm not sure what the process will be, since literally all the infrastructure supporting the training/assignments of volunteers is all destroyed. The guys who are there now will all be going to Kiev, and many will die. The Legion is totally outgunned and has a few crazy Ukrainian leaders. After the attack, one officer wanted to march everyone to Kiev and fight. Absolute insanity. Stay home. You know, and it's just like, yes, that's what war against the superpower is. Getting bombed at, and most of you's fucking dying.
I mean, I'm not sure why they anticipated that they were going to be anything but, you know, meat in a meat grinder at this point. Like, look what they're up against. I mean, this is, it's not even evenly matched.
Yeah, and you know, he's like, well, I just joined as a medic and I expected to have proper equipment and organization to accomplish something. It's like,
join as a medic and they think that they're not gonna, that everything's, you know, they're gonna show up and everything's gonna be, you know, provided for them and have proper, I mean, what
it's ridiculous. It's like, yeah, wars aren't generally just like these smooth, you know, like heroic things that you just you know, come home to you know, tell stories. They're fucking horrible. It's, I don't know how, like, we got, I think the word war just does it along, right? Like, you're in a war. That's, everybody should, you ever seen Saving Private Ryan? It wasn't a happy movie. You know, the beginning fucking sucked. Maybe think about that. That's how war is. You know, just go with that in your mind, that that's how it's gonna be. It's gonna fucking be horrible. You probably won't live.
No, and I mean, that's you probably won't. Like, I don't think that people understand that. Like, they think they're gonna go over and either they're not gonna have a combat role, which is like what I think a lot of them assume. Like, they weren't gonna be in any kind of situation where their life was actually in danger, which I don't understand. Or they thought that it was gonna be, you know, some kind of like, they thought it was gonna be easy.
Yeah, like it's like gonna be like they were the main character, so like they're normally the main
in a
character
movie,
has
like in a fucking movie, that they were gonna be the main character in a fucking movie. They have plot armor so they can't die.
Exactly, and it's just like, well, no, this is your one life, and if somebody drops a bomb on it, it's over.
Like,
that's just how that works.
Yeah, I don't understand. Yeah, I mean I mean it's not real to them. And they go over there and they get this shock for, you know, reality is that, you know, lots of undeserving people get, you know, fucking exploded, and even if they are fully trained soldiers, they still die because it's fucking war. That's what happens. Doesn't matter how well trained you are sometimes.
Bullets go faster than your training. Who'd have thunk it?
Unbelievable.
And so, speaking of bombings, though, there was a bombing of a Mariupol art school that was reported on and allegedly done by Russians. And there was an art school that was being used as a shelter. And this is from the Washington Post. This is like the, you know, the mainstream position on it, or narrative of it. And according, by Russian, according to the mayor, Vadim Boychenko, and the city council. And so they admit that they can't independently verify this, but this is the general story that's being reported, is that suspected Russian airstrike, Russian allegedly does it, Russia, and that's what's been going on. But like I mentioned last week, the Gray Zone is a great place for anti-war news. Grayzone and antiwar.com. Both of those places are fucking awesome. And this is done by Max Blumenthal, who had written a really good book about Israel and Israel's treatment of Palestinians called Goliath, because he's Jewish, his Jewish blood, so he can go to Israel and freely travel among places that a lot of people can't. And so he was able to conduct a lot of interviews and see a lot of things firsthand that only, like incredibly pro-Zionist people would, normally see. But, him being more of an actual journalist and, neutral in the stance of, well, not neutral in the stance of like, war crimes and of like, he's more, firm in that stance. And so he'll report on it like truthfully. And it categorizes even like the far right shift in Israel, which is very interesting to see, given the fact that they're, Jewish and like far right nationalists at the same time. It's actually really fascinating. But anyways, that guy wrote this article, does great work on the Gray Zone. And he has an article, like it says, was the bombing of Mariupol theater staged by Ukrainian Azov extremists to trigger NATO intervention. And his source of this is not the local government and city council and mayor and all that, but the people who were evacuated from Mariupol and given warnings of a false flag attack coming. And so he goes over at the beginning just, what happened. The supposed bombing took place when Zelensky is trying to get Congress to approve a no-fly zone. And a closer look reveals that local residents in Mariupol had warned 3 days before the March 16 incidents that the theater would be the site of a false flag attack launched by the openly neo-Nazi Azov battalion, which controlled the building and the territory around it. Civilians that escaped the city through humanitarian corridors have testified that they were held by Azov as human shields in the area, and that Azov fighters detonated parts of the theater as they retreated, despite claims of a massive Russian airstrike that reduced the building to ashes. All civilians appear to have escaped with their lives. Video of the attack on the theater remains unavailable at the time of publication. Only photographs of the damaged structure can be viewed. The Russian military defense has denied conducting an airstrike on the theater, asserting that the site had no military value and that no sorties were flown in the area on March 16. And let's see here. While the Russian military operation in Ukraine has triggered a humanitarian crisis in Mariupol, it is clear that Russia gained nothing by targeting the theater and virtually guaranteed itself another public relations blow by targeting a building filled with civilians, including ethnic Russians. Azov, on the other hand, stood to benefit from a dramatic and grisly attack, blamed on Russia, in full retreat all around Mariupol and facing the possibility of brutal treatment at the hands of a Russian military hell-bent on quote-unquote denazification. Its fighters' only hope seemed to lie in triggering direct NATO intervention. And so, just talks more about Zelensky and his "I Have a Dream" speech, and as Azov fighters, who and their, motives in the whole situation, and the fact that they, use Nazi symbols. Got to go over that. And so, there's a whole lot more that's discussed in here besides that. But that's the main idea of it, was that. There's good evidence to believe that this bombing was a false flag. That was not done by Russia at all.
I mean, based on, who stands to gain the most from this, it makes complete sense that it was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure some fucking retard will call that Russian propaganda, but like, this is based on the people who were there. Somehow were warned that this was going to happen 3 days before. There weren't any casualties because the building was evacuated, and then they blew up parts of it as they like. I mean, you're supposed to believe that they just that Russia just conducted an airstrike on a fucking building for no reason.
With ethnic Russians, when their whole stance here is to protect ethnic Russians, because that's the thing about Putin.
Like, what the fuck was the gain there? Yeah,
that's the thing about Putin that a lot of people don't understand, is that, like, so after the Soviet Union collapsed and all of these Soviet satellite states became independent. This put a lot of ethnic Russians in a very sticky spot, because they had spread throughout the Soviet bloc, because it was all the Soviet Union. It was all the mother country. They weren't separate states. So Russians were all around the land. And then when the Soviet Union dissolved and it became just Russia, they didn't disappear from those areas. They still remained. But Putin and the Russian state, they have a very deep nationalistic sentiment, and this includes for the Russian people wherever they may be, not including in the borders of Russia, not limited to the borders of Russia. So
right.
So there is a very legitimate, or a very, at least from their point of view, legitimate concern for Russian people in the greater Soviet former Soviet bloc.
Because again, it's the collapse of the Soviet Union wasn't that long ago.
No, everybody's got parents involved.
Yeah, they're still alive and well, living in all these other places that were former Soviet countries that are still fucking alive. They remember.
Mm-hmm. And so
it's not ancient history.
So yeah, a lot of the remainder of the article is going into more details. Let's see. Oh, it's not translated, so but yeah, it's interviews with the people from Marpol who are testifying about the Azov being there.
I had seen something else about that as well, about talking about that they were shooting and bombing their own fucking citizens and then blaming it on Russia. I wonder if that was one of the instances that they were referring to, or if that's the only instance, but that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Выехали откуда? Как вы смогли выехать? Почему? А украинская армия не помогала вам?
Army was shooting at us, shooting at the people.
Вы рады, что вы выехали?
Happy you managed to leave, of course, thank you.
А?
В подвале сидело 300 человек. Это в одном только доме.
300 people hiding in one basement house.
А нас никто не выпускал оттуда.
Не давали коридор. Украина не выпускала из города полностью. Заблокированы были. Приезжали военные, говорят, ни в коем случае не выезжайте из города, если вам будет предоставлен коридор Российской Федерации. Они хотели дальше нами прикрываться и все.
Yeah, so they're testifying that they were basically blocked in, that the corridors, the escape tunnels that they had to be used to leave were being blocked off by the Ukrainian military so that they could stay in Mariupol and be used as human shields.
Clearly, all of these people are just Russian chaos agents.
Yeah. And that's the most amazing part. It always gets me how confidently people can declare their side, right? Because they've been convinced that the other side was brainwashed, due to one thing, right? And and you got to be like, yo, I don't even know what source you think I'm getting my shit from, but it's not that. I'm looking at this shit happen. I to the we're fucking on Tumblr. We post videos of shit the day shit happens. We look for all that, and we try to find the most on the ground shit to tell us the story. And yeah, so we have that bombing, which was, I don't think it was spread super widely, but it was still, I did hear about it, in terms of evidence of Russian aggression. They bombed a school and, could have killed hundreds, but they didn't because they were all magically safe. And so, yeah, that's a great one. Another one from the gray zone is Congress and what they had to say. Max Blumenthal went to, Washington and was standing outside of Capitol Hill, I believe it is. I don't know the geography of Washington, D.C. that well, but I think it's Capitol Hill. Talks to a bunch of people, and you can see that. Are you familiar with Thomas Massey?
I feel like I've heard the name before.
He's very libertarian leaning, but I think he's a Republican. But still, especially on the issue of war and on a lot of other issues, he's generally pretty good. And so you can see the difference between the wishy-washy warmongery Congress people versus when you fucking stop Thomas Massey to talk about the issue, and it's pretty interesting, like comparison and difference between the two.
On March 8th, as the Russian military operation inside Ukraine expanded, President Joseph Biden announced a total ban on Russian oil to the United States, sending oil prices to record highs.
Today, I'm announcing the United States is targeting the main artery of Russia's economy. We're banning all imports of Russian oil and gas and energy. That means Russian oil will no longer be acceptable at U.S. ports, and the American people will deal another.
Bro, Sleepy Joe was such a fucking apt nickname. Like, you know, I'm just like, yo, he was right on the fucking money with that nickname. I gotta say, sorry, but I mean, the dude just has no pep.
None.
At all. Do not invite him to a pep rally. He will fucking bring the place down. Holy shit.
Powerful blow to Putin's war machine.
Following Biden's announcement, his allies in the media spread the message that higher gas and food prices and rising inflation was a price that Americans simply had to pay to put the hurt on Putin.
Ultimately, if the price of combating tyranny is a period of much higher gas prices, that's a price we need to be prepared to pay as a country.
Today, the average gas price in America hit an all-time record high of over $4 per gallon. Okay, that stings, but a clean conscience is worth $1 or $2. I'm willing to pay.
Let's ask the people of Mariupol about how clean our conscience is supporting the Ukrainian army.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah, say what you will about Trump. Yeah, from chat. Say what you will about Trump. He knew how to give a good nickname. Sleepy Joe, Crooked Hillary. Yeah, I mean, they were fantastic. But yeah, so clean conscience. That's totally clean conscience. You know, the people of Mariupol thank us for our support of the Ukrainian military and their Azov thugs.
It's important.
On Capitol Hill, where Congress was set to vote on a gigantic emergency package of arms to Ukraine and NATO, I questioned lawmakers on the economic price to working-class Americans of a major military escalation.
I think that he did well in banning Russian oil. I think they would be nefarious and pernicious and really bad for the Venezuelan people and its future as a free country to start dealing with Maduro, even to buy shoes from him, purses, whatever this has nothing to do with oil. It has to do with engaging with another dictator.
Yeah, and
because we remember that that Biden went to Maduro to ask him for oil after this whole ordeal went down, which is just one like oh yeah, just we need a clean conscience, so let's get our oil from Maduro and Saudi Arabia instead of Russia. That'll clean our conscience.
Saudi Arabia, like their oil comes with a clean conscience for sure.
Oh yeah, we covered the 81 executions in a single day last week. That was so clean the conscience.
We wouldn't want to buy oil from a tyrannical country.
Nope, no, we wouldn't want to do that. That would be terrible.
And do you support a no-fly zone in Ukraine?
I support everything that has to do with punishing Vladimir Putin and helping the Ukrainians.
Wouldn't that mean direct conventional warfare with Russia?
I don't know what it will mean, but freedom is not free.
So you don't know what a no-fly zone will mean. If you would have to shoot down Russian planes, I mean.
Of course.
So conventional war with Russia.
Listen, thank you.
Hi, Max Blumenthal from the Gray Zone. I was just
how quickly that was shut down.
Dear God. Of course, I support it all. I have no fucking idea what it means, but I support it all. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Wondering what you thought of the Russian oil ban.
I support the ban on oil.
So do you think that working class Americans should pay more to escalate the cost against Russia?
No, I think we need to ban the oil from Russia, and we need to reduce gas prices in this country. And the way we reduce gas prices is to say to the big oil companies, you can't be making billions of profits while gouging people at the pump.
I mean, prices are already going up massively because of the sanctions, inflation's going up, and that's all to fight Russia. I mean, that's the message Biden and his people are sending. Don't you think? I mean, do you think Americans? What skin in the game do Americans have for Ukraine?
Americans.
Wait, this is a good one, right? What skin in the game do Americans have? This congressperson is about to educate us on very important principles here.
Have the skin in the game to stand up for freedom, to stand up for human rights. We've always done that as a nation, and we want to make sure that we stand up for Europe and NATO, and we stand up to bullies. I mean, people see on television.
Sorry.
Okay, so the hours we could spend just on, you know, what America truly stands up to when it comes to their foreign policy. It's just, I mean, it would be an entirely different fucking podcast. But just one small one.
Yeah.
Well, one small one is Yemen, and this is a very important one because it's been ongoing since the Obama administration. Now, one thing about it is that technically Saudi Arabia is waging the war in Yemen against these Houthi quote-unquote terrorists, and they're using Al-Qaeda to fight that war on their behalf. So right off the bat, I mean, arming Al-Qaeda is treason for you and I. We can't do that. It's treason. Al-Qaeda is a terrorist organization that is opposed to the U.S. They helped plan the 9/11 attack. They conducted the 9/11 attack. That's a group, and this is not like an Al-Qaeda subsidiary, like, corporate fucking partner. This is like directly tied to the group. This is directly tied to the actual group of people who planned and carried out the 9/11 attack. So this is not like degrees of separation, terrorism separation, or anything. This is direct involvement, and we're giving the Saudis arms to give to them. And it's not even just arms, like we're directly involved in, like, we used to, I think, have our fighters fly them there and drop the bombs ourselves, but I think now we're limited to like logistically helping them. Like, we replace their tires, we give them fuel, we let them use our aircraft carriers, right? If we just stopped giving them tires, right? We stopped replacing, because they have to replace those like fairly often. Like, I think after every flight, or if not a pretty low number of flights, those tires need to be replaced, because they fucking hard brake on them and everything. And so if we just stopped giving them those fucking tires, they can't bomb the country anymore, right? So that's how little effort it would take for Congress to stand up against human rights violations in Yemen, against stand up to ending the largest humanitarian crisis on planet Earth currently going on. That's how little effort it would fucking take. And this guy has the fucking stones to be like, oh, well, we here at Congress, we stand up. Fuck you, bro. Like, just absolutely eat 17 dicks.
The bar is so low.
And he fucking tripping over it, like it's literally on the ground, and then it's like he's doing one of them Scooby-Doo pratfalls, like, over it. That's how fucking ridiculous the situation is. But
sorry. Killing children, killing mothers. I mean, it's horrific. And we, as in America, we are the greatest nation in the world. We've always stood up for freedom, stand up for human rights.
So raising inflation and raising oil prices for freedom.
I don't think that's connected. I think the reason that people are paying $5 at the pump and $6 at the pump is because these big oil companies are profiting billions of dollars. Why is it that they're putting the billions of dollars, because the price of oil is going up? Why do they put that in with their stockholders with stock buybacks? Make sure that they are being taxed if they're fleecing the American public, and lower the gas prices. That's what we need to do.
Right, and
so
what?
Tax them if they raise the prices, and that will lower the prices. That won't increase the prices more. That's not
that's how economics work, right? These people will clearly take a hit on their bottom line if you tax them more, because people with lots of money who are shareholders in big oil companies. That's how they work.
There's no evidence that we've ever seen that like increasing taxes also increases the price of the end commodity. Like that's not a thing that we see time and time again.
They don't work that increase into their bottom line to make sure that, they still make money. No. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that like this whole idea that these, huge oil corporations with their like, millions and billions in terms of like money not being like poured into the actual oil business itself, but the strategy for being profitable in the situation where government controls things like pipelines and prices and things like that. It's like they have so many fucking tentacles in Washington that you think that like if you like campaign for some higher tax, like let's say, for hypothetical sake that the increase in taxes, like let's say if like, oh, we tax them if they have high prices, therefore they will keep low prices to stop the triggering of those taxes, right? To avoid those taxes, they'll keep their prices underneath the threshold where those taxes kick in. And so that will do that. But it's like to think that small like measure of taxes is going to like overcome the whole, like all of the money and lobbying efforts that they have in terms of like, getting favorable with other politicians, like this whole influence that they have over politicians, that little measure is going to offset all of that effect. And it's like, I don't fucking buy it for a second. I think that like, power can corrupt a fucking politician regardless of the tax rate. I think that there's better, like there's probably loopholes and shit that they can get away with underneath where they're still abiding by the rules like they've always fucking done, because we had a 90% tax rate in the 50s and all these progressives are like, oh, we should have gone back to the 50s where they had 90% tax rates and stuff, but like literally no fucking rich people ever paid those tax rates, because like in the whole fucking like tax code there was like the first 2 pages that was like, these are the tax rates, 90% for this bracket and 70% for this bracket and so on and so forth. The first 2 pages talked about that shit. And then like the rest of the thousands of pages in the tax codes were exemptions for those, for that
exemptions.
Setup. And that politicians would write exemptions that were specific to like specific like situations. It's like so-and-so company is exempted from this, situation that's happening right fucking. It wasn't like a general rule for companies that were in a certain type of situation. It was just like this one very specific financial situation, exemption there, because this company bribed me to put that into the tax code for him.
Right.
It's like that's how corruption in government works, man. And you can't just like tax away a company's profits, because they're going to recoup it somewhere else, because they have lawyers and they have entire departments of people that are all centered around lobbying for their favorable conditions in government. And
right,
your tax ain't gonna fucking solve it.
It sounds good,
And
he says tax and everybody goes yeah, tax the rich, because that's the fucking line. They latch onto that, but they don't really think about it too much.
Well, so they think like maybe like one step ahead. They think, okay, we initiate the tax and then the company reacts to the tax by doing the thing, by being pushed in the direction that we want to. But they don't consider like there's a whole myriad of other solutions out of this, that sideways steps out of this fucking shit, that it would be in that company's best interest to figure out. Right, it's totally in the incentive of that company to figure out how to sidestep the punishments of this tax or this new rule, and to carve out favorable conditions, right? Because now we've expanded the government power over a particular zone of industry, right? Now we've expanded government power. Now that power can be exploited in a new, fantastical way that we didn't even think of before. And that's where like things like business licenses come. Okay, that's going to be general economics, whole nother fucking issue. Let's stick on Russia. Let's stick on these interviews. I'm not going to get into business licenses now. That's another fucking podcast.
Kind of ran on an anti-war peace platform. You're part of the Progressive Caucus. Do you support all the foreign fighters and weapons being sent into Ukraine, sending them aircraft, Stinger missiles, calling for an insurgency.
I was opposed to the war in Iraq because that was an unjust war. I had supported the strike in Afghanistan because those were terrorists, and I was opposed then to the long years in Afghanistan. But I think that this is a just war that the Ukrainians.
So shipping more weapons and escalating.
Well, we're making sure that they are armed to be able to fight that, and the Congress is going to pass $10 billion, and I support them, their ability to stand for self-determination.
So there's the virtue.
So you know, that's, we went over that a little bit before. Is like this idea that like we're going to be able to just give them enough arms to be formidable against Russia. It's just a fucking pipe dream. I just don't buy it for one fucking second. Anybody, I think, if truly thinks about it for fucking 10 seconds, thinks, yeah, I don't think Ukraine can be made to stand up to fucking Russia.
I think it's more just it's a stepping stone, you know, so that later they can argue for, you know, actual full-on intervention. Like, oh, well, maybe we can't, which means now we need to actually start sending troops and everything's inches.
Yeah. And, you know, these motherfuckers don't even know what a no-fly zone is, so they don't even tell. It's like, yeah, well, that's open act of war. That's open war aggression. That's Putin can't do nothing to that.
He won't. Yeah, he absolutely won't do nothing to that. He said he won't do nothing to that. So
yeah, it would be ridiculous. Like no U.S. politician would do nothing to that if they were in Putin's shoes. It's just a fucking insane thing to even think that it's like, oh, we're just gonna do this, and it's gonna make the whole situation better. Like, fuck off. So yeah, contrast that whole you know, schlock that those two just fucking went through with Thomas Massie, who has a more sensible head on his shoulders.
So there's the virtue signaling kind of sanctions that Biden and some private companies have undertaken. And then there are the crippling sanctions. Okay, but who are they crippling? They're not crippling Putin per se. He'll find a market for his oil. They're crippling the people here in this country. First of all, we're going to see higher prices. The low-income people are being pinched the most by inflation. We've got gasoline is about to go to $5 a gallon at the pump, and it's not going to stop there. So, you know, and there are lots of other things we bring from Russia, like fertilizer, over $1 billion. Don't, you know, try not putting $1 billion of fertilizer on the fields in America this year and see what that does to food prices and supply chain issues. So if you think all of these things through, there's two kinds of sanctions. The sanctions that would cripple Russia, but it would cripple us as well. It's kind of mutually assured sanctions, economic devastation. If he does, in fact, sanction Russia, we'll see higher energy prices. But look, that's going to go into the global supply of oil. Somebody else is going to buy that. It may, in fact, end up here after it changes hands. It's not really going to reduce how much oil that Russia sells, at least not in the medium to long term.
But what is your sense inside that building? Are we edging closer to a conventional conflict with a nuclear armed power in Russia?
Well, I hope we're not edging closer, but there's a vote to send more money to Ukraine and to our NATO allies, in fact, to finance troops in Eastern Europe. Two things can't simultaneously be true. The news reports that are coming back would lead you to believe that Russia's getting crushed. They're being devastated by Ukraine and Ukraine alone. It can't be a fact that Russia's a paper tiger and they're being destroyed by Ukrainian army and National Guard. And at the same time, we need to send billions of dollars more in weapons and troops to NATO.
Are you able to form any coalition or partnership with the progressives in Congress against escalating this war? Ilhan Omar just came out against, I believe, the Russian oil ban.
I would have hoped to get some to vote against that resolution, but we didn't get any. I thought that the true progressives were against war, and I have formed coalitions with them in the past in opposing the war in Afghanistan, for instance, and getting that to come to an end. I haven't seen it yet. I don't know when we'll see it. I have seen them become strong supporters of the right to keep and bear arms, though, in Ukraine at least. So I'm encouraged by that coalition.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, suddenly they are all about civilian gun ownership.
Yeah. It's now
like overnight.
And so I did have another bit on Twitter about the videos that were posted of the Azov guys, like tying people to poles and tying people to the floor with their pants down and torturing them. However, the Twitter account that had those videos, at least the source that I had on them, that Twitter account got suspended, so we can't look over those here. But that was also a very interesting thing, is that you had a lot of reports of Azov thugs that were torturing people, and not just captured Russian soldiers, but anybody objecting to any males of fighting age objecting to going to fight, anybody, minor theft, even women, and yeah, so that was definitely a thing that also going on. And the last Gray Zone article that I wanted to look at is a common defense of the Azov Nazi, or not defense of that, but a common sidestep, is that there can't be a neo-Nazi influence in Ukraine because Ukraine's president is Jewish, and therefore a Jew is not going to be leading a neo-Nazi battalion, and so that's something that I've seen time and time again, and there's a lot of evidence that disproves that yes, he's Jewish, but his political goals are more important than just than that, because there's ultimately those neo-Nazis, they're nationalists, and they're anti-Russian, and so from his point of view, they serve his purpose. And there was there's a lot of evidence to show how supportive he is of that. This is him meeting with some soldiers, encouraging them, and there's no translation on that, so we can't even fucking really confirm what's going on there. But yeah, so he goes out, makes public appearances, and so there's specific people too that we can point to in this whole chain of events. There was one guy that was trying to give me shit for one of my posts on the pointing out the black sun that they use, that the soldiers use, and he's like, well, this could and then we showed him, he's like, okay, well, that could be fucking anybody or whatever, and then we show the Ukrainian soldier battalion flying the fucking flags and everything, and they're like, oh, well, that could be a made for TV movie, that's he was literally pulling shit like this out, and he's like, that could be a made for TV movie. I don't know that that's really a real thing. And I'm like, listen, man, we know the people and stuff. I'm like, and he was expecting me to do this whole fucking fucking book report for him, and I'm like, yo, maybe me 8 years ago in my long posting days would have created this whole fucking post about the different people from Azov who were traced, can be traced down the line to Ukrainian politics today and all that shit.
But I mean, it's not worth it. He's not actually arguing in good faith in any way at all. Even if you did pull all of that shit out, they wouldn't matter. There'd be another sidestep. You'd move the bar back. Something would happen that doesn't count. They're not actually they're not actually asking you for information.
Yeah, and honestly, this is, if I'm talking about something that's going on and something that's real, and if you don't believe me and my posts and you want to assume that's not real because I didn't provide you the proof, cool, whatever. I'm not actually here to convince that one motherfucker. For one, most of the people who follow what we do, it's just we build this stuff over time. It's we look at the signs, we look at where things are fucking going, and we we'll make definitive statements in a moment that doesn't seem like it's supported by maybe the particular post that we have in front of us, but I back my shit. I tend to base my shit off of a lot of background evidence, and if I know that shit's real and I can pull it up and I can talk about it with you here on this in a more long form relaxed format, then I'm not really interested in doing a long post detailing it all there, because it's just I got shit to do. I got I got a life to live that's not proving a point to some random fucker on a blogging website. And but yeah, this is a great article that if he does want to see the evidence of like legitimate Nazis and like the actual individual people, right, that are involved in the players in the game, so to speak, this is a great article to look at because he talks about a couple of Azov people, like this guy Andrew Belensky, who is Azov leader and has like, generally open fucking neo-Nazi slogans that he espouses. He's basically professing to bring fighters to Zalat, this fucking meeting spot where Zelensky was speaking, to fight on Zelensky's behalf, what was it? Where is it? And yeah, so obviously it tells about how Azov military was absorbed into the National Corps, which is their National Guard. Then where is that bit? Oh yeah, so the Western PR talking about basically he can't be a Nazi stooge because he's Jewish.
MP with President Putin's United Russia Party. You're saying that the object of this exercise is to denazify Ukraine. You are, I'm sure, aware that the president of Ukraine is Jewish.
Zelensky not Nazis. Zelensky himself afraid of Nazis very well. He's Jewish.
Another fact Putin seems to be conveniently ignoring, that Zelensky is Jewish, and he says his grandfather fought against the Nazis for the Soviets.
Moscow police arrested hundreds of demonstrators calling for an end to a war that Putin said was to, quote, demilitarize and denazify Ukraine.
Oh, that's another interesting thing too. He's like, okay, so his father helped fight the Soviets against the Nazis. There's a very, very popular historical figure in Ukraine. His last name is Bandera. I forget his first name. I'd have to look it up. But he was a Nazi collaborator who fought the Soviets. And just, I think it was this year or it might have been last year, they made like celebrating his life a national holiday. I think it's January 1st. But they have a national holiday dedicated to this Nazi collaborator because he was also a Soviet fighter, but he's also like but he was also like a genuinely like nationalistic dude. It wasn't like, oh, I'm I just helping out the guy who's fighting my enemy. It was a little bit deeper than that, as far as I understand it. Could be wrong there, but yeah. So they have a national holiday dedicated to celebrating this dude, and he's on the exact opposite end of the whole fighting that Zelensky is using to defend. Like, oh, my father did the opposite thing. It's like, well, yeah, but you had a national holiday celebrating a dude who did the opposite. So
yeah,
come on, like, you really think this is a good defense? That this is really one that you want to fall back on? And yeah, we got the Azov, of course, doing their thing with their wonderful flags and the blue and yellow. And there's also the financing aspect of it, and where Azov gets their money from. And where is it here? Igor Kolomoisky. He's a Ukrainian baron, energy baron, who's also Jewish heritage, but he is a big funder of Azov ever since 2014. Since the fucking beginning of it. And he's also bankrolled a couple other militias and used them for his own personal interests financially. Which really, Jewish guy using thugs for financial interests?
Yeah, clearly hasn't stopped him at all.
Yeah. And so he backed Zelensky, and Zelensky, who ran on anti-corruption, and then got exposed by the Pandora Papers that his inner circle was getting large payments from Kolomoisky in offshore accounts. And then, yeah, when Zelensky took office, obviously Azov still maintained control, especially in cities like Mariupol. Yeah, they have like political control there. They're basically like strong arming the people to do their wishes, and they react. They're violent about it. They're not just National Guard that's defensive and that sort of thing. And yeah, you can see some of their handiwork. This is a bus carrying supporters of Ukraine's opposition party. So, take that out. But yeah, unconfirmed reports that some passengers have been murdered, but at least some confirmation that there's been physical, ramifications. And yeah, he even acknowledged that there was neo-Nazi militants, but he ran on a platform of reining them in, right? And doing that. But then he was in meetings. There's a youth group called the C14, and the 14 is a reference to the 14 words. And he's meeting with them and capitulate. They're like a sub faction of Azov. And so yeah, they have the
so clearly he's not doing much to
rein in the Nazis.
Rein them in. I mean, he's not doing anything to rein them in at all, really, that I can see so far. Like, there hasn't. I mean, is there been any effort?
No, they have official positions in government. Yeah, again, explaining that C14 draws it from the 14 words, which everybody knows, and yeah, you can freaking this. They're open about all this stuff. This is them. It's called a pogrom. It's basically they're raiding a Romani camp and like ransacking the place.
А что вы тут делаете? Вещи забрали. Вещи какие? А вот это вещи вот это называется, да? Да. Да вы что вот так? Давай. Давай, пацаны, ломайте все вообще.
And yeah, so these are the type of people who are getting funding and getting official,
sanctioned by the
support.
government. Like, it was sanctioned by the city government.
Yeah, exactly.
It received state funding throughout 2018 for national patriotic education. Like, where is the fucking evidence that there's some kind of disconnect or separation between these two? They're state funded. If there were a bunch of state funded neo-Nazi groups running around in the United States, like,
yeah, we would never hear the end of it.
There would be no fucking question about it. There would be none of this splitting hairs bullshit or saying, well, Joe Biden is not a neo-Nazi. So even though the federal government is bankrolling a bunch of neo-Nazi groups, well, that can't be true because Joe Biden isn't a Nazi. There would never be any of this fucking splitting hairs shit.
Yeah, and so,
Really, anyone. I think at that point it would be indefensible. I don't think that there'd be anybody able to defend it at that point because it's so open and obvious. You can follow the money, and nobody.
Yeah, it's like, and they're sitting, they're sitting a couple of seats down too. It's like this is got the president, and then Yevhen Karas, who's the leader of C14, sitting next to each other, and you'll hear it right from Karas himself. Where is it? Oh yeah, where they're. You've seen this video, right? Where they're smearing the bullets in pig fat because because of the Islamic people that they're fighting against. Yeah, we got some Roman salutes there from people. This is a good interview that I want to show, but where is it? But Karas, he had said something right here. He's like, in general, deputies of all factions, the National Guard, the Security Service of Ukraine, and the Ministry of Internal Affairs work for us. You can joke like that.
Jesus.
And throughout 2019, Zelensky and his administration deepened their ties with the ultra-nationalistic elements. Then Prime Minister Oleksiy Goncharuk, on stage at the neo-Nazi Veterans Strong concert. And of course, you got yourself a nice hooked cross in the background. And where is it? Yeah, so the then Prime Minister appeared on stage at a neo-Nazi concert organized by C14, referencing the 14 words, and and he's apparently an accused murderer as well. And
wow.
And she not only attended it but promoted the concert on Facebook.
Promoted it on Facebook.
Yes.
Jesus Christ.
There was a Nazi footballer who he had posed with what is it? With photos of Stepan Bandera, the Nazi collaborator that I mentioned before. He was a supporter of Azov Battalion, and then Zelensky defended him. And then we have an ultranationalist militiaman, Dmitry Yarosh, was appointed advisor to the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, and he's another follower of Bandera, and he's vowing to do the de-Russification of Ukraine, and he was awarded a Hero of Ukraine by Zelensky. He is receiving that award. And then we have Yevhen Karas, the guy in the middle, I believe, and he's talking about the influence that C-14 and Azov have had in Ukrainian politics, which is very, very telling.
Не тому, що ми хороші, як нам кажуть, нам допомагає Захід, бо вони хочуть нам блага, тому що ми виконуємо задачі Заходу. Тому що ми єдині, хто готові їх виконувати, бо нам весело, нам прикольно убивати і прикольно воювати.
So that's super important right there. This is because we perform the tasks set by the West. Because we're the only ones who are ready to do them. And because we have fun killing, and we have fun fighting.
This is why I don't understand where people have gotten this idea that Ukraine is this progressive liberal democracy.
No, it don't. We're defending freedom over there. It's like, these are the people in their government. Dudes that stand behind the 14 words, say they have fun killing. The very epitome of all the boogeymen that you talk about, in Trump and all this other shit. And they're openly talking about this.
Убивати і прикольно воювати. І вони думають, вау, давайте вже подивимося, що це буде. Тому виник цей новий альянс, про який зараз говорять, там Туреччина, Польща, Британія, Україна. Ми тут флагман. Тому що ми затіяли війну, якої не було вже останніх 60 років. Так от, уявіть собі, скільки в нас зброї, скільки в нас ветеранів. А тепер уявіть, зникає Росія, вона розвалюється. Тобто виникає там 5 Росій, там не до Росії і так далі. На європейському континенті найбільше. Тільки в Британії там, здається, більше. Ви розумієте, цей потенціал цих збройних сил, це стане проблемою зразу для всіх, хто зараз там десь намагається робити хенькі уколи. І оце от є наша радість і наша печаль. Чому, щоб ви розуміли, чому так все важко? Не тому, що ми, українці, 300 років, наша дупа страждала, чому ж нарешті влада до нас не впаде, ми такі хороші, ми хочемо в Європу. Ні, це величезна, потужна держава, і якщо ми тут прийдемо до влади, це буде і радість, і проблеми для всього світу. Тому це величезна, амбітна задача. Ми живемо дуже в класний час, і тому перед нами стоять надзвичайно амбітна, класна ціль. Не просто стати там частиною.
Yeah, so this is a very cool goal. Is basically, to stand up to Russia and to break them up and to become a superpower in Europe is what he wants for Ukraine.
Європейської сім'ї, яка вже там розвалилася. А це є, вже йдеться про те, що нові політичні альянси вже глобального рівня, нові політичні виклики.
Yeah, about Maidan, the topic of your creation was just a stream.
Націоналістичні ідеї. Націоналісти якби були там ключовим фактором однозначно і на фронті. Зараз дуже багато є спекуляцій на фронті.
And so, by the way, Maidan, for the people who don't know, were the initial protests that occurred in 2014 that sparked the coup. And the Maidan protests is where you can find pictures of John McCain, literally in with the protesters, supporting them and cheering them on and shit. And so, this was a US-backed, US-influenced coup from the fucking get-go. And we have the photos of John McCain to prove it. He's fucking there, smiling with them.
Don't we also have photos of John McCain with ISIS?
Yes. Yeah.
Isn't that weird? That seems weird.
Well,
there's probably not a pattern there.
It is if you want to pretend our politicians aren't war criminals. Yes.
A little weird. I feel like it's a little weird.
If they're not war criminals, then it definitely is weird because war criminals shouldn't be with terrorist groups. But, you know, so far as I'm concerned, they're the perfect of fucking pals. So yeah, Maidan was a victory for nationalistic ideas. Nationalists were a key factor there and clearly at the front lines.
Однозначно і на фронті. Зараз дуже багато є спекуляцій. Ну, нациків вже ж було небагато, там, ну, ЛГБТшники, там, посольства кажуть, ну, скільки там було там нациків? Ну, нациків там було там 10%.
So this is exactly what I was telling you before.
There it is, maybe about 10%.
Yeah, so this is literally the fucking Twitter debunking that's been going around is that, oh, you know, there's only about 10% of real Nazis that are in Azov and only a small portion of Azov is in the National Guard. Therefore, Nazi's not such a big deal.
Там, ну, запаяних ідейних. Ну, це ж питання в тому, це може так казати лише Йов, який не був на війні, не знає.
Which is, I love that bit. The thing is that's such a thing can say only a moron that never was at a war.
Який не був на війні, не знає, наскільки оцих от 10%, хоча там навіть може даже менше було, я думаю, націоналістів було хай там даже 8%, ну наскільки це в пропорції ефективності впливу, наскільки це складало просто галопуючи безкінечну підвищення ефективності. Не було б цих 8%, бо ефективність упала б на 90%.
Yeah. So if not for those 8% of neo-Nazis, the effectiveness of the Maidan protests would have dropped by 90%. And from the chat, John McCain didn't care whose flesh was burning so long as he got to huff the fumes from it. That's true. He, dude, I still cannot believe during his fucking campaign, he had a fucking video come out of him doing the parody of Barbara Ann. Yeah, with Bomb Iran. I was like, yo, bro, like really. And then people were still like okay with him afterwards. Like people just forgot, just like with Bush, they're like, oh yeah, he's not like, I don't remember the war criminal bit. He's just kind of like a cool old guy now. Let's hate Trump instead. But yeah, so Nazis totally important
Тут не
in
в
Maidan.
числі мова. Так само, як на Майдані. Зараз вже почали ліваки, там фонди Бьоля, там і так далі.
So he's calling them, this is February 5th, right? So this is definitely like when those, like the source of where those libs and progs are getting the, you know,
right.
the numbers 10%. Count. And he's fucking straight up being like, these fucking fools trying to count numbers.
Перераховувати. Ну, націоналістів там було, там, да, вони були впливові, там, та які впливові? Не було б націоналістів, все би це от пішло би сразу на гей-парад.
Jesus Christ.
So it's like these guys are openly like claiming responsibility for this whole situation.
Extremely openly. Like there is no ambiguity here.
Yeah. And
if we get killed, we died fighting a holy war. Like there's no ambiguity here.
Nope. And yeah, Ukrainian Nazis preventing people from leaving Mariupol and shooting at them. And I don't know what happens in that video, so I'm not going to show the rest of it for YouTube.
Yeah, it could be bad.
But either way, yeah, so that still doesn't seem even just from there. Azov fighters shooting and killing civilians, attempting to flee. Yeah. This, it's a real thing. You know, it's not made up. It's not just, and, you know, this is for somebody who is, you know, you and I are not exactly, the people who cry Nazi very often. You know, this is probably the most I've ever talked about Nazis in the past, like, fucking 10 years. That was, you know, like, of concern, right? Like, usually, you know,
this isn't even... Yeah, I mean, you can talk about, you know, people that have fascist policies or tendencies and stuff like that, but, like, this is a step further. They are actual fucking Nazis. You go, you are Nazis. And unlike, you know, 90% of the people who get accused of being, you know, erroneously accused of being Nazis, they don't defend themselves at all. They go, yes, absolutely, we sure are. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, so...
Like, they're not ashamed of it, because, of course, if you're an actual fucking Nazi, why would you be ashamed of being called a Nazi? That's why this whole, like, oh, the crypto fascists, all this. It never makes fucking sense to me. The people that you're accusing of being Nazis, if they were, wouldn't be ashamed of it. They're not ashamed of it. There's fuckers on Tumblr that are Nazis, and they're not ashamed of it. They don't try to pretend that they're not.
And so, yeah, the point of this article is basically, yeah, the Jewish heritage, Zelensky's Jewish heritage being used as a shield is a pretty paper thin one, and the case for, you know, neo-Nazi paramilitaries being not only present in Ukrainian National Guard but very influential in the military and in the politics is pretty clear, and it has been for, like, this is, you know, on the 4th of March, which is before a lot of these people started talking about this issue. This was the suspended account. It just had the Azov guys tying people up and, you know, torturing them and stuff, which was interesting to know. What was the last? Oh yeah, biological research facilities in Ukraine. This was another thing that I saw. Is this in? Oh yeah, this is.
Well, I only have a minute left. Let me ask you. Does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons?
Ukraine has biological research facilities, which, in fact, we are now quite concerned Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of. So we are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach.
I'm sure you're aware that the Russian propaganda groups are already putting out there all kinds of information about how they've uncovered a plot by the Ukrainians to release biological weapons in the country and with NATO's coordination. If there's a biological or chemical weapon incident or attack inside of Ukraine, is there any doubt in your mind that 100% it would be the Russians that would be behind it?
There is no doubt in my mind, Senator, and it is classic Russian technique to blame on the other guy what they're planning to do themselves.
It's only a Russian technique. No other people.
Only a Russian technique, yeah.
Try that whole Darvo.
Well, originally wasn't the story that there weren't any biological research
for a while, yeah, I think that was the case, and then
but
so yeah, they're like, we're
right?
worried about it. If there is a chemical attack, it's definitely Russia, not us. That's the long and short of it. But yeah, they exist. They're confirmed. There's definitely biological research facilities there. This one I haven't watched myself. Only seen the title of it. That Ukrainian forces are firing on their own people.
Yes.
Да? Да. Недавно украинский контролировал this, да?
Украинская армия бьет, конечно, била украинская армия, конечно.
Ага. И как это было это время?
Как это было? Как это было? Ехало 2 танка. Это я видела своими глазами, потому что я была на улице. Ехало 2 танка украинских. 3-й танк немножечко остановился, он отстал от них. 2 со скоростью сумасшедшей проскочили на гору, а 3-й начал обстрел по селу. И когда он 3 раза выпустил свои гранаты, и чем там танк стреляет этот, он попал вот туда, и потом 2 раза он туда, в ту сторону попал, а 3-й раз он разрушил угол на садике. Это я видела своими глазами, потому что я бежала в подвал.
So, вы сказал, украинский танк стреляет на украинский контролировал садик.
Они обстреливали наше село. Они обстреливали наше село.
Но они контролировали это, как это возможно?
Как это возможно? Ну как возможно? А как они делают это все? Они специально рушат. Если вы пришли воевать, зачем же вы рушите дома? Причем тут простые дома. Что же они? Да. А тут бой был, тут сумасшедший бой у нас в центре был. И притом это было, я вам 100% говорю, это была провокация 100%, потому что вот здесь стоял этот БТР, уперся в сельский совет, в нем обнаружили форму русскую, в нем обнаружили пайки русские. Какого черта этот БТР тут русский спрятался и стрелял своих русских? Если у нас вот тут они заняли позицию хлопцы русские, всем танкам возле колодца. Они заняли позицию. А эти идиоты выскочили с балки с бокчевика и делали вот здесь провокацию. И свои вот эти джавелины вот здесь покидали.
Ага, это провокация...
Конечно, это натурально.
Кто провокация?
Укропская провокация, натурально.
Yeah. So, but this idea that there would be a false flag is a crazy one. Just Russian propaganda. And the way that you know that is because Zelensky's media tells you that, and they'll tell you all one story because
he nationalized it.
Yep, he banned all opposition. So now, it's a very short article actually, but there's 11 oppositional political parties and he banned all those oppositional political parties and any anti-Zelensky media is all just for him. And so now we know what's the truth and what's Russian propaganda, because they'll tell us the truth, and anything else is Russian propaganda.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the stupid fucking little spats I got in today. Somebody said something about, "Oh, you're just being brainwashed by RT, the Russian state media." And I'm like, well, I mean, Ukraine now has Russian state media, or not Russian state media, but Ukrainian state media. That's what this is. It's all nationalized. It's nationalized Ukrainian media.
And honestly, if you look at people who work for RT, it's not Russian journalists, it's Western journalists, at least in RT fucking the US fucking affiliate or whatever the fuck they have of that. It's United States journalists who have generally worked independently before. They have careers before RT. You can research how good or not they are, and they'll generally report, they're like, yo, our content isn't curated by a higher corporate office or anything like that. We generally get to do what we want in terms of the stance that we're going to take in our reports and things like that. And so, I mean, you can take that with a grain of salt if you want, because obviously it's coming directly. Right. We're not, propaganda. We do what we want. So yeah, I mean, sure, they could be lying through their fucking teeth, but again, it's not as if these are Russian nationals who are doing no, sir, we tell you truth. No, it's it's fucking American journalists who have had jobs in American companies and everything before. And so, there's a bit of plausibility to it, that if they say, you know what, I've got this job at RT and RT lets me cover the stories that I want in the manner that I want to, I think it's pretty fucking credible. But even if it wasn't, you could just take all of RT's content with a grain of salt. You'd be like, okay, this is generally going to have the more Russian slant to it, sure. But right. just to pretend that it's all what, this is the great thing for me is these motherfuckers know what Russian propaganda even is. They they understand what it means to filter out propaganda. And it's no, I heard on the TV that this other thing is propaganda. I'm like, that's cute, bro. That's fucking adorable. Do you not know how propaganda works? It's somebody telling you some shit is real, and that you can only trust them and not the fucking other guy. Are you fucking serious right now?
I do like the notion that because Russian propaganda exists, I mean it does.
Sure.
That the information coming from the other side cannot also be propaganda. No. Only one of these things can be propaganda, and the other one must be the 100% truth. Why can't they both be not
and anything that doubts the truth is propaganda. We've been given the truth. Yeah.
We already know that there's plenty of propaganda coming out of Ukraine. I mean, how long ago was what the Ghost of Kiev? Come on.
Oh, I know. The Ghost of Kiev and that island too.
The Snake Island. I mean, and that shit was everywhere. Everywhere. It was fucking everywhere. Immediately believed that these plucky Ukrainian underdogs were, destroying Russia, and it's all bullshit. How is that not? I mean, that's propaganda. And now you have a nationalized media, no problem. RT, huge problem. Obviously full of propaganda. Nationalized Ukrainian media, couldn't possibly be full of propaganda also. They're just trying to cut through all the disinformation coming from Russia. In no way will they abuse the fact that they control all the information. No way. People in power do not control or do not abuse their control of things like that. That never happens.
That's just temporary, like
It's
income
temporary.
taxes.
It's temporary. Yeah, I'm sure it'll go back to normal. Later.
Yeah, and the very last thing I have is another anti-war article about Mr. Joseph and the fact that he's directly responsible, just like he's responsible for most bad shit that happens in this country, which is surprising. Like, you would think that, like, as one politician, that it was like a limited number of shit that he was involved at. I was talking about the other day, what was it, asset forfeiture. And I had to remind everybody, I was like, yo, y'all remember Joe Biden is the dude who introduced the expansion on asset forfeiture. And it's just like, yeah, even like just these things that we know vaguely to be terrible. Like, one of the worst things about cops is asset forfeiture. And there's a lot to be criticized about cops, but asset forfeiture is a fucking horrible one because it's legit stealing.
Nasty element of it, yeah.
It's just straight up
Even
stealing.
if you don't commit a crime. Even if you don't commit a crime, they'll still steal your money.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the most amazing bits, is that you could tell me, like, yeah, you don't need to be convicted of a crime to have your shit taken away from you. And they'll just do it, and then you just don't get it. Hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever the fuck it is, a house. It's fucking nuts. And yeah, he introduced the bill that expanded that shit, and he, according to Ted Snyder here, could have prevented the whole war. And so there was Victoria Nuland first as Undersecretary of State of Political Affairs, which he helped appoint, and she had a role in leading the U.S. to back the coup in 2014, and of course Joe Biden was involved in that as well. But Nuland was running the Ukraine's the Obama's State Department Ukraine policy, and yeah, so she was intimately important in that role, and she was in that role because of Joe Biden. And I like this is like, though Biden likes to insist that the Russian invasion of Ukraine was born immaculately out of Russian desire, innocent of any U.S. provocations, he knows that the provocative regime change in 2014 was an illegal U.S. supported coup that seriously threatened Russian security concerns at its very border by pulling Ukraine into the European Union and NATO sphere. He knows because he was not an innocent bystander in the Obama administration, and Victoria Nuland was not secretly going rogue in her Ukraine operation. Nuland had Biden's approval in the intercepted call between Nuland and American ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt, that so clearly demonstrated the U.S. role in the coup. Nuland implicated Biden when Pyatt says that the West needing to quote unquote midwife the thing, a metaphorical admission of America's role in leading the coup. Nuland clearly says that then President Biden himself would be willing to do the midwifery. That midwifery was the catalyst for the current Ukraine crisis, and Biden was the midwife, hardly unprovoked and hardly unknown to Biden. And then there's the bit about NATO and how NATO has been slowly inching closer and closer. And Russia's concerns with that, and the fact that like Biden was well aware of that. Let's see here. Yeah, William Burns, who was his director of the CIA. Where is it? Oh yeah, was the one who was. I think he had like specific warnings where he was on record about it. And what else is there? For speech, and yeah. So this is really, good details on just Biden's direct involvement with it, and how his claims of ignorance and the claims of just the unprovoked attack. I mean, whenever they use that word, it just always makes me fucking cackle. It's just like the meanings of words just is been completely thrown out the window. Words mean fucking nothing. Unprovoked, you could just say that. And
you could just say it.
And it's like fucking Tumblr, we are amazed sometimes about. So yeah, there's just posts there. They just say things that have no connection to anything. But we think they're funny and they're great. But yeah, it's the same thing. It's just you could just say unprovoked as if and it just becomes a meme. Just like what was it?
Mostly peaceful protests.
Mostly peaceful. There's the safe and effective is another one that was used a lot.
A great one.
So you know, all these things, it's just like they latch onto a phrase, they latch onto an NPC line, and it's just shuffled through. You know, price gouging. Yeah, greedy oil companies, price gouging, all that shit. It's just no information behind it. It's just spouting off with stuff, and it's especially interesting to see like when like U.S. intelligence personalities are given like interviews and shit. Like I've seen this one CIA dude on Bill Maher, right? Bill Maher, the great like liberal rebel, right? The dude questioning authority, and he's fucking jerking off the CIA spook who's like talking. Who was he criticizing? He was criticizing. Oh, it was a Milo. Yeah, that's right. It was a Milo Yiannopoulos fucking appearance, and I forgot what I forgot what he said on Bill Maher, but he was talking shit like he always does, right? And he was fucking saying some, and then like, the spook straight up says like, oh, this is like some Russian line or whatever, like just again making these like Russian fucking like fear mongering like claims, because it was at the time when like they wanted to associate Putin with Donald Trump, and so the Russiagate was like in full swing, and so yeah, okay, I forgot what point Milo was making to trigger that like Russia accusation, but it's like yeah, there's. And then Bill Maher was just like eating, because the thing is like Milo was of course just making fun of the dude. He was like, oh, why do you have such horrible people on your show, Bill? And like they're just so terrible. And Bill's like, I don't. And Bill defended the CIA. He's like, he's done so much for the country and blah blah blah. Defended. It's like, yo, what? Like I thought like these liberal fucking rebels were supposed to be like anti-authoritarian, not like bootlicking the fucking CIA.
Yeah. Of all people, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and it was just so fucking transparent because yeah, all of that fucking Russia fucking fear mongering about Russiagate was just absolute nonsense. 51 fucking intelligence officers confirmed that what was it, Hunter Biden's laptop is false, and like fucking eat my dick, bro. Come on. Yeah. All right, so that's what I got for this week, and I also had the 2-hour Scott Horton video, but yeah, we've been going for 2 hours, and I know it's like 11 for you now. Are gonna be 11?
It's about to hit midnight here, but I mean it's
midnight. That's right. It's 3 hours, not 2 hours. Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, we'll definitely revisit that one because it has a lot of information that we've already talked about, like especially with like Azov and the 2014 coup. But it's if you've never seen Scott Horton give a speech or like never read any of his books, just how informative he is with his time and how thorough he is, and also just he's just like fucking damn charismatic in terms of like the way that he delivers shit. He's just great. It's just kind of like this laid back, no nonsense style that doesn't insult your intelligence, that reveals so much. Like especially I love his coverage on the Middle East and the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq and stuff,
right?
Because it's just so if he wasn't saying it how it was, you would not fucking believe like how backwards it is, how like, oh yeah, in the 80s, H.W. Bush and Reagan, they fucking supported Saddam and gave him weapons and stuff, and then like they fucking like 2 years later they like did a fucking turnaround and were like, oh wait, this whole Kuwait thing, we need to fucking and then Saddam is trying to get an out in Kuwait and like to get some peace talks in there, and they're like, nah, fuck it, let's just fight instead. And then it's just this whole fucking series of events is just so wild. And it takes a dude like him to just be so well informed and to have this like casual delivery of it that like really just drives it all to home really, really fucking well. And so yeah, I've been following his coverage on Mideast foreign policy for a couple years now. I read his book on Afghanistan. I have his book on the War on Terror, which I've started reading, but I'm nowhere near finished right now, because I'm reading it too slowly and reading like 2 other books at the same time. Just because I'm a fucking nerd and I have too much time on my hands. But yeah, I love the guy. I love his podcast, Anti-War Radio, or what's called the Scott Horton Show, but it's on broadcast radio as well, and so it's called Anti-War Radio on there, or I think it's like the greater block of content. It's part of his affiliation with antiwar.com. But yeah, great guy, and that speech, could be saved for next week when we start earlier and got a little bit more time in the day to sort of.
Yeah. No, next week I'll definitely be able to start earlier. I think that's a good one to do. I'm actually looking forward to that one a lot.
Yeah, he has a speech also that he gave. I think it was a couple of days ago or like a week ago. It was also like about 2 hours long, but it was actually a summary of both the Yemen crisis and Ukraine. So it covered both of those, which is really good. I haven't watched it yet. I kind of want to soon. So if they have I've seen it only in podcast form. I haven't seen it on his YouTube channel, but if he does release a YouTube video of it, then that might be a good one to look into instead. But yeah, I'll watch them both. I've watched the first one, but I'll watch the second one and see which seems to be a better use of our time. And then we'll have the week's events too to go over. Because fucking gas prices. We'll see how that goes for one.
We'll at least have that. I'm sure we'll have plenty of other shit that'll come up in just a week.
Oh yeah. All right, so yeah, that's gonna be it for us for today, for this week's the absolute fucking state of things. It's been wild, especially with Ukraine, and I'm sure more will continue to develop. And yeah, we'll be here next week talking about whatever the fuck goes on then. So yeah, that'll be it for our live show. We'll see you hopefully next Monday. We're shooting for Monday again, and we'll. As it gets closer, we'll announce the time that we think we can make it, and stay tuned for all that shit. Thanks everybody who stuck by these 2 hours or so, and we'll see you next time.